Hey guys, welcome to the second episode of the Gidlow Movie Show. I am your host, Danz Newz, joined with my brother...
Thomas Newz.
Thomas Newz, the Gidlow... Wait, is my last name Newz then?
Maybe
Shouldn't this
someday.
be the Newz movie show then?
That doesn't have the same ring as Gidlow movie show. I don't think.
It could be Skyward News Show.
Ooh, that has a nice ring to it. I like it.
Skyward News.
I follow Skyward News.
Well, who does?
Just me.
Just you. Okay. Well, welcome to the second podcast. Thank you guys for your awesome comments of praise, and you said that our podcast was Oscar worthy, and that we should win all the awards, including Best Foreign Podcast.
True. So we have some heritage someplace other than here.
Is Irish considered foreign?
Oh yeah.
Oh really?
Oh yes.
I didn't know. No, I'm just kidding. Yes. Okay.
Gidlow is a very Irish name.
Yes. So after a couple of oh gosh, voice crack. I'm trying to clear my throat. Anyway, after trying to do this a couple times, we finally...
This is take 57.
This is take 57. I messed up the intro a bunch. Also, we tried recording earlier and the internet went out, so that was a disaster. But anyway,
Yes.
We're ready now. We're ready
We
now.
are more than ready.
So
bring it on.
So last podcast, it was kind of more of a get-to-know-you sort of thing. This podcast is going to be more in line with what our podcasts are going to be. It's going to be far more structured. We have a structure. First off, we're going to lead off with emails. What you guys thought of the last podcast and such, or questions you might have. So in order to email us, all you have to do is email gidlowshow@gmail.com, and either we will feature it on the show, or Tom will go through, and sometimes I will go through and respond to emails. So this is a conversation that we're having here.
Yes.
Even if it doesn't make it on the show, we do like to hear what you guys think, and we will take into consideration things.
They can also, if they wish, they can get both of us on Twitter, at Danz News and at Thomas Gidlow, and we can get answers and discussion through there too as well.
Yes. Also, the shows, you can follow the show's Twitter whenever you want to find out. Sometimes they'll tweet out news articles we're going to talk about, or even just the link to the podcast themselves if you don't catch them. So that's at Gidlow Show. So we get all the plugs out?
I think so. Good
all right. I'm looking at my list here. I don't have a list. I'm lying. Okay. So on to the first email. Man, I feel like I have to clear my throat. I don't know what the deal is.
Should have done that before the show.
I know, it just started now. I'm sorry. Apologies.
I cleared my throat before the show like a professional.
I don't speak for a living, I guess. Okay. Our very first email to the show was from Brandon, and he says, Dear Dan and Tom, just got done watching the first episode of the podcast. It was awesome, and I think it's a great idea to share your thoughts about something you love, and about hearing others' opinions. I'm 15 years old, and I'm just now starting to really get into movies. Before, I just really cared about action and if it was funny or not, but now I'm more focused on cinematography and story. I've been watching a lot of movies lately, been on break for school, and have been broadening my horizons when it comes to films. I've seen oldies like Psycho and Citizen Kane. I haven't seen either of those.
Me neither.
It's probably a crime to cinema that Tom and I have not seen those movies.
Well, yeah, both for sure, but especially Citizen Kane, because that's one I have actually wanted to watch for the longest time and just have not found the time to do it.
I have both of them on Blu-ray, and supposedly Citizen Kane is like the gold standard of cinema.
Right.
And
exactly.
I've never. I mean, I know the twist ending, I guess, but
I don't.
You don't what?
I don't.
You don't know what Rosebud is?
I haven't a clue. I've heard it referenced in Field of Dreams.
Rosebud. Anyway, so I have both of those, and I need to watch them, but I haven't gotten to Psycho because I have the Alfred Hitchcock collection. It's like all of his movies, and I want to watch them all in a row. So, yeah. But anyway, okay, so back onto the email. I've seen a lot of older movies like Psycho and Citizen Kane, as well as movies that have recently come out, Django Unchained being my latest. That was a good movie. I'm interested in becoming a movie reviewer, as I have an increasing interest in journalism. What I'm trying to ask, is there any movies or television shows that any of y'all recommend, as I'm interested in knowing? Hope the message wasn't too long, and I hope to hear back from y'all. Thanks, Brandon. Well, thank you, Brandon. Woo-hoo! I hope to hear back from y'all soon, too. Sorry, I probably just he's angry at us and will never listen to the show again.
Probably.
Well, thank you, Brandon, for the email. First off, thank you for
Brandon.
the things that you said, the kind things that you said. And I'm glad you're broadening your horizon as far as movies go, because I kind of used to be. I think maybe when I was younger, I kind of watched whatever, but there was a rut where I kind of just watched the major releases, and that's kind of a mistake to do sometimes because you'll miss out on a lot of good kind of hidden gems. But man, my throat. Anyway, the question that you asked at the end about us recommending things, that's something that in the conception of the podcast in general was something I wanted to do. Each episode towards the end, probably right before we do reviews, we'll do recommends, where Tom and I will recommend one movie, and essentially Fisher's jumping around. Fisher, stop doing that.
Secure your animals, sir.
I wish. Anyway, we'll recommend one movie, and then what you guys could do is, if you've seen it, email us, let us know what you thought of it, or talk about it in the comments. And we just kind of want to open a discussion, or maybe even suggest something you might not have seen. So you can track down a copy, and we'll let you know if it's on Netflix Instant Stream or something like that, because that's far easier to get to sometimes. But track down a copy, watch the movie, and then email us and let us know, and we'll kind of have a discussion on the next show. About one, why we recommended the movie in the first place, or why we love the movie, and it'll be interesting to get different perspectives, whether people hate it or love it, because people have different opinions, and that's kind of what the show is about, is celebrating opinions on movies, and not just our own.
Infinite diversity and infinite combinations.
Yes, variety is the spice of life.
Someone will be able to point out where that's from.
Was it Star Trek?
Thank you for ruining.
Any reference you make is Star Trek.
Well, not any.
Well,
reference
a lot of
that
them.
I make, but I'm trying to engage the audience.
Well, what Star Trek is it from?
No, it's from the original series mostly.
Oh, well, now you ruined it.
It's from the planet Vulcan.
I see. Yes. Okay. Well, thank you for your email, Brandon. We will be recommending stuff. That was kind of a theme through a lot of the emails and comments we had. People asking us to make a list of movies or something like that, and we figured it'd be fun to just spread it out across all of our shows, because this guy and I have seen a lot of movies, and many of them good, many of them bad. We might even recommend bad movies. I think my first recommend might be. Well, no, I haven't decided exactly what my recommend.
I know what I'm going to recommend.
Yes, I know what you're going to recommend too. But anyway, you'll have to listen to towards the end of the show to figure out. Either that or skip ahead. Don't do that. Anyway, okay. So, second email from Brad. This one's short and sweet. Subject line: Quentin Tarantino. Nothing much, just talk about Quentin Tarantino and some of his movies. Nothing specific. Thank you for reading this if you do. Here's to many more great episodes to come. Thank you very much, Brad. And this was something that I kind of we didn't last week. On our podcast, all we were talking about was, our influences in movies, what got us into movies, what movies we watched. And I talked about directors a little bit, and I did gloss over a few, not intentionally, I just didn't think about them. One was Lord of the Rings. I'm a huge fan, and I think those are really important films for recent cinema, and they were big inspirations to me, so I forgot to mention those. But Quentin Tarantino also. More recently for me, Tom had seen a lot more of Tarantino's stuff earlier on, and he's the one who introduced me to Tarantino in the first place, with Correct. Kill Bill?
The Kill Bill. I'm not exactly sure when we actually sat down and watched it for the first time, but it was...
DVD at some point.
Yeah. Definitely. I had seen Pulp Fiction, and I think that might have been it as far as him, because he'd only made 3 before Kill Bill. Right?
Yeah,
it
Reservoir,
was Pulp Fiction,
Reservoir
Jackie
Dogs.
Brown, and Reservoir Dogs, and I had not seen
not
Jackie
in that
Brown
order.
or Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah,
well, not in that order.
Yes,
but I hadn't seen the other ones previous to Kill Bill, so this was my initial. Mm-hmm. And you have your sort of conceptions of what other people say about him, and just little things here and there, but definitely Kill Bill was my first introduction to Quentin Tarantino. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to throw in too another person that brought this up via Twitter, which you can also do. Killer Mustache was somebody that asked us about Quentin Tarantino as well. Mm-hmm. So it all plays in together. He asked, "What do you think his best movie is?" But that's very subjective. Anyway, the exposure to all of Tarantino in that film to me was very impactful, and it's been a big inspiration for whatever the little things that I've done in film and will do hopefully at some point. Just the way that he incorporates things that most other directors, or a lot of other directors, or a lot of other film people just don't incorporate in. He brings a lot of, he knows his thing. He knows his movies. He knows what he likes. He brings it all together. And with Kill Bill, although Kill Bill 1's probably a little bit more actiony than Kill Bill 2, just the overall story is fantastic. And it seems like he continues to, I don't think he's quite peaked at a certain movie. It seems like he moves on, and he'll, the next project he does will be just as good, if not better, than the next one.
Yeah, there's definitely merit in each one of his films. It's one of those things. It's almost like Nolan, where, not everybody probably will agree with this, but I don't feel he has really a weak movie. Most of his movies, although I had started off with Kill Bill. You introduced me to Kill Bill. We watched Inglourious Bastards when it came out in theaters. You and I had gone to see it in theaters. And more recently, since I've been going Blu-ray crazy, I bought his entire collection of films outside of Django, because that's still out, and watched them in order. And I watched up to Kill Bill. I watched Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, and then Kill Bill Volume 1. And what I found was, I really liked his earlier stuff much more than Kill Bill. I mean, I love Kill Bill, and the thing is, when I got to Kill Bill again after being kind of almost spoiled by his early work, I could see that I felt he was I don't want to say stronger filmmaker, but I don't know, Kill Bill was a lot more mishmashy than all of his other work before that. And I wasn't necessarily as big a fan of the kind of crazy style that was in there. I don't know. I still enjoyed it. I still very much enjoyed it, and I
know what you're trying to say, and yet I can't really formulate it into words as well. Yeah. It's like his early movies were very distinct. Yeah. And not to say that his later movies haven't been, but they were
also more
distinct.
Kind of single-minded almost. Not single-minded. They still had scattered stories, but it was still a lot more kind of straightforward, I think.
Yes. That's when you become successful, you have a lot more at your disposal to kind of utilize and incorporate into your films. Yeah. And I hate to say it, but it kind of almost feels, especially like Reservoir Dogs, it has that feeling, that sort of feeling that they didn't have this monstrous budget, they didn't have a humongous crew, and they had a fantastic cast. But, it felt like they did way more than they possibly could have, than most other people could with what they had to use. Yeah. Maybe that has something to do with it.
Potentially. But that all being said, I still love the anime sequence in Kill Bill. I'm not a big fan of anime, but I really like that sequence.
Very well done.
Very, very well done. Indeed. Quentin Tarantino should do a full anime movie. I might watch it then. I don't know. Yeah, but anyway. I don't know. Anyway, thank you very much, Brad, for that question.
Thank you, Brad.
We got off on a little thing there. All right, so next email is from Corey. First off, I'd like to say really awesome podcast, heaps of fun to listen to. Thank you, Corey. You're awesome. Yes. The main point of this email was mainly to ask, is there any chance that you guys will bring up TV series? Example, The Walking Dead, Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones, etc., etc., when they start back up. I understand that you get a lot of suggestions about movies you should talk about. Yes, we do. One of my favorite movies is Fight Club. I love how throughout the whole movie they are giving away the whole plot, but you don't pick it up until the next time you watch it. So I was wondering what your thoughts on that movie are. I'm sorry. So I was wondering what your thoughts are on the movie, that is, if you've seen it. Thanks again. P.S. Sorry for my horrible spelling / grammar. I have a minor case of dyslexia. I don't...
Easy for you to say.
Easy for you to say. No, there isn't anything wrong at the email, so...
Good job.
Good job, Corey.
Grammar is awesome.
Spot on. Start writing for the New York Times immediately. So, first off... this is it's going to mainly be a movie podcast. We're not really going to be going into TV. We probably won't be going to TV. I mean, we kind of talked about Star Trek a little bit, but we weren't talking about the show, really. We were just talking about, the movies. So, no, we won't really be talking about TV, like Walking Dead or Breaking Bad. So,
yeah, and really, for me, myself, other than Star Trek Voyager, which I'm heavily engaged in on Netflix right now, I really couldn't contribute much to that because I don't really watch TV. So.
Yeah, Tom doesn't watch any of those.
I don't really know what's good and what's on. I've seen like one episode of Storage Wars. I think that's like the new sensation, or was like a year ago, or whatever.
It was maybe like 2 years ago.
Yeah, I don't know. That's as up to date as I am with TV.
I see. Okay, so yeah, Tom wouldn't necessarily be the best one, and I don't watch too many TV shows either. Yeah, like I haven't watched Game of Thrones, but like Walking Dead, Breaking Bad, and Dexter. Those are my 3 main shows that I watch. I don't really watch anything else. Although I'm trying to catch up on things. But anyway, we won't really be talking about it on the podcast. It's a movie podcast. Sorry if that disappoints you. Also about Fight Club. I've seen most of that movie, but I've never seen it sitting down in like all at once.
I remember specifically only watching the first hour or so of the film, and then for some reason I just did not watch the rest of it. So I really couldn't say one way or another.
Yeah.
I remember some of it, but the parts of it being good. But I really couldn't tell you much beyond that.
Yeah, I've probably seen the entire thing just in sections and never together. So I'll have to sit down and watch it. But thank you very much, Corey, for your email.
Thanks, Corey.
I think your dyslexia is fine for that email. Anyway, okay. So next one is from Niek. 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 Niek.
Niek?
Niek. Niek.
Probably, yeah, it's probably Nick.
We are the knights who say Niek. Anyway, it's Nee. What are the movies you guys really like, but are really underrated? By the way, loved your first podcast.
Movies that you like that are really underrated? Oh, well, first one that comes to my mind would be The Professional.
Yes.
Only because it's I don't remember. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I don't think it did very well at the box office at all. And other than, now it seemingly has grown into sort of a bigger cult following, but very underrated movie. Not too many people seem to really reference it often from what I've seen. Very underrated movie.
Yeah.
And there's another one, but it's my recommendation, so I have to wait till later.
Gotcha. Yep, I flagged that one specifically so you could say The Professional. But that was before I knew about the whole recommended thing. Okay, so next email is from Martin. Hi, Dan and Tom. I want to ask you what you guys think about The Town. I personally do like it, but I want to know your review because you, Dan, did give James a nun mask from The Town. And from what I know, from that, I want to know your review. I will be tons happy if you guys read my mail, but I will be even more happy if you answer it. Love you guys. Keep up the series and bye. From Martin.
Hearts. We got hearts from that one.
We got hearts. I wanted to highlight this one specifically because we're probably going to get a million questions about specific movies.
Right.
But this also lends back to last week's podcast where I didn't even think about Ben Affleck. He's also one of my favorite directors of recent. He's only done 3 movies, and I haven't seen his first. I haven't seen Gone Baby Gone. Have you seen Gone Baby Gone?
I have not.
Okay, I thought you had. No. But that's why I wanted to highlight this one because...
Oh, wait, now that you say that, I might have. I can't remember it off the top of my head.
It was Morgan Freeman and Casey Affleck and other actors.
Doesn't ring a bell, but...
Okay. I haven't seen it, but I've wanted to. I think Ben Affleck is a really great director from just The Town and Argo. I was a really big fan of The Town. The Town was a very good movie. Excellent performances and everything, and I think... Ben Affleck is a very formidable director, and I think he's kind of come into his own as far as directing. So I'm excited to see anything he does.
Kind of launched Jeremy Renner into the spotlight.
Yes, a lot more than he had been.
Yes.
He got nominated for that movie for Best Supporting Actor, and it was very much deserved because that was. I'm pretty sure he got nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Either way, he was excellent in that movie, and so was Ben Affleck. So. Yes, I really like The Town, and you did as well, Tom, right?
I did.
Yes, we had gone to see it in theaters, and that was the day after I had seen Heat for the first time, and that was kind of a mistake because Heat was obviously a heavy inspiration for The Town, and so I was kind of spoiled by the awesome action sequences in Heat. But The Town still held its own and was still thoroughly enjoyable. But I was kind of disappointed that I had watched Heat the day before we went and saw that. So, yes, thank you, Martin, for your awesome email. Next email. All right, this one is from Hasib, and the subject is getting into film. Hey guys. Loved the first show, but I had a question. You guys were discussing the process of creating film by yourselves. I know Dan was saying that he never really went out and found actors, and I have a similar problem. Me, currently being in high school, find it really tough to find actors who are willing to be in film of your creation. My question was, how exactly did Tom find actors? Did he advertise somewhere, or did he just happen to have a friend who were willing enough, or to have friends who were willing enough? Thanks a bunch, Hasib. So that's for you, Tom.
I think I believe I inadvertently responded to that question too. I think I did actually reply to him, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't believe so, but continue.
Yeah, so if I do contradict myself from what I actually
No, you
typed.
didn't. You didn't.
Oh, I didn't? Okay, I know it was a similar question that somebody had asked. Well, for me, we've been able to get like really good responses from real actors and crew folk. Excuse me. From the projects that we've done, because we had a very solid foundation, or not so much a solid foundation, but we approached it from a, dot your I's, cross your T's, do a lot of research. The internet is an amazing thing if you know anybody or if you have friends that have similar interests. That's the biggest thing, is to do the best you can with what you got. Old Wilford Brimley, best quote. It's always in the back of my mind somewhere. Just do the best you can with what you have, and enjoy what you do. If you find something that you really enjoy doing, eventually you're going to be successful if you keep at it. At least that's what I believe. But for me personally, I did a lot of research online about, hearing horror stories about how things fall apart and how things, how somebody could have a really great idea, but it'll never get off the floor because they don't do this, this, and this. So do your research, and the internet, places like Facebook, Twitter. There's probably, I don't know where this guy lives, but there's probably actors all over the place, and you just don't know it. So there are, social media sites. You can look up little film groups that are probably around your area. You could probably throw some things out there to see if there are any people that are willing to help out. But at this stage, since you're still in high school, I would definitely say if you can find some friends that have similar interests, if you have, somebody that has any kind of like a phone camera or whatever, don't be so concerned at the start with, having every piece of equipment that you have to have. Enjoy it, get gain experience, and just go with it. Go with the flow.
Just do it, as Nike says.
Do it. I learned really early on that the vast majority of people that are interested in doing a film never get their first one done. So that's the thing. If you want to do something and all of that, just do it.
Oh, loosen up, all of you. More Wilford Brimley.
No, I'm not perfect.
All right. So thank you. Who was that? Oh, thank you. That wasn't Hasib, was it? That was Hasib.
I believe so, yeah.
Yes, thank you,
Very good
Hasib.
question. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so our next email is from Moises. That's an interesting name. Okay, first off, I want to congratulate you both, Danz and Tom, for making a good show that I, myself, and others enjoy. Well, thank you very much, Moises. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Thank you.
What I wanted to say is that I recommend you guys watch a very underrated movie called Moon. It was released in 2009. It is such an amazing movie. Yes, I agree. You've seen it as well. I made you watch it,
I've only seen parts. First part.
I thought did we not watch it all the way through?
We didn't watch it all the way through.
Okay, we might have fallen. Well, you might have fallen asleep during it or something.
Yeah, I mean, I would have.
I think we might have been
through.
tired and just stopped watching it.
But it probably had something to do, at least with me, interest-wise.
Kevin Spacey's in it. You have to be interested in it.
Well,
by default.
I like Kevin Spacey. I like who's the main guy?
Sam Rockwell.
Yeah, he's a good actor.
He is good.
But I could go back and watch it and actually be able to form a decent opinion based on what I've seen. But
it's good.
From what I remember, I really hadn't gotten invested in it.
It is kind of hard because it's one guy on a space station for a good while, and there's a bit of intrigue as it goes on, and it gets interesting. But you have to invest yourself in the beginning and be able to get through it. But I still love it. It's a very good movie. Duncan Jones has kind of displayed that he's getting better and better at making films, and with Source Code was really good, and I think he's a good sci-fi director, and I can't see what he works on next. I don't know if I'm aware of anything that he's working on next, but hopefully he has a new movie coming out soon. So yes, Moon. All right, so we got 2 more emails lined up here, I believe. Nope, we have 3 more emails lined up. All right, these ones are long ones, too.
66 more emails.
The next 2 are pretty long, so bear with us. And usually I don't know if we'll be highlighting as many emails. I'll kind of go through and pick more,
concise.
kind of, concise. But there are a lot of things I wanted to cover from missing out on directors and the last thing. So, this is from JoJo Jinx. Hey guys, I really enjoyed the first episode. I'm a huge fan of Dan, and it was a great chance to hear from Tom as well. Listening to your review of The King's Speech, there are a few things you mentioned that I'd like to comment on. First off, you said it seemed like a sort of film you'd watch in school. As it happens, I went to a premiere of this on a school trip, and going along with what Tom was saying about the film not having a wide appeal, I wasn't looking forward to seeing it. However, after I did, I loved it. It's the film that's made me more open to a lot of cinema. Ooh, excuse me. Whereas before, I would often dismiss whole genres, which isn't good. You shouldn't do that.
No, but I know where he's coming from.
Yes. Well, chick flicks you might be able to dismiss. I now
Not all of them.
Not all of them. No, I know. Anyway, I now have an open mind about every film I come across. That's very good. Yes. I'm sorry. I'm going to stop interjecting now. Also, the rating for the film here in England is a 12A. I'm not sure what the American equivalent is because the swearing is in a non-aggressive context. It's acceptable, fortunately. Yeah, so the American system, a 12A would be PG-13. But whenever you say fuck more than, like, if you can have essentially one non-sexual fuck in it will be acceptable for PG-13. If there are more than one uses of the word fuck, it's automatically a rated R, which means it's 17 or over without parental guidance. So a parent could take their child to a rated R film.
Oh, yes.
But it's seen as, not as desirable because it's open to less of an audience, essentially. So that's why they cut it down to make a PG-13. The American MPAA is pretty strict sometimes, and that's something they should have been able to flex on because it wasn't in any, like you said, the BBFC rating was for non-aggressive, swearing. The context of it was non-aggressive, right. Which the BBFC in some cases are far more progressive than the MPAA, and their ratings are far better because the thing is that
I wouldn't really label. I wouldn't associate the MPAA with progressive.
Yeah,
in any form or fashion.
But
there was some film somewhere down. It was some. I think it was a documentary of some kind or something like that.
This film is not yet rated?
No, it was about bullying or something like that.
Oh.
And yeah. And there was this big stink about people wanting to try to petition the MPAA to make an exception
because the kids in the documentary are swearing at other kids.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm both sides of it though because you can't petition one film and expect one film to have an exception because then everybody's open to the exception. So, in that sense, I've
It should all be contextual.
Right. Well, that's the thing. And the main overall the point of it is the MPA is a bunch of parents. They're not some, big suits
supposedly.
and Hollywood, bigwigs, supposedly.
Supposedly,
according to their site and their, well, the way they rate movies, if you read their ratings, it looks like parents. It looks like, people who are not, quote unquote, in the industry. Some of them are just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Thematic elements being, a warning
rating.
of sorts.
Yeah.
Every single movie ever made has thematic elements. So,
but the biggest thing is there's a veil of secrecy around the MPAA. They don't list publicly their raters. So who's to say that they are parents and stuff like that?
I don't necessarily. I don't need to know who they are.
But that's ridiculous when you are in a situation where there are these people that are saying this film, which you spent a lot of time and money on, say you can't show this to a wide audience. You can't show it to the audience you intend it for.
Right.
That under sometimes ridiculous circumstances. I'm not saying, if you make a movie where people are blowing each other's heads off that it shouldn't be rated R. Right. I'm saying there should be a bit more accountability for the MPAA.
There should be a clear and concise context where it's not open to as much It's not open to just solely their opinion. They should go by a series of guidelines, which I'm sure they do, but like more strict,
Yeah.
So film companies know going in, okay, this is what we can do and this is what we can't do. And if they want to change that, then they could petition if there's enough support, that kind of thing. But it's very much a old boys sort of way they do it, in that this is the way we do it. You either got to do it or you're not going to get a rating, I guess.
Yes. Okay. Well, continuing on with the email. I would like to know, what are the American ratings and how strict are they? Okay, well, there is G, which is all general audience. It's general audiences. Anybody can go see that movie. A 2-year-old could go buy a ticket and go see the movie.
Right.
So there's G, PG, which is parental guidance.
Suggested.
That's, suggested.
Right.
PG-13, that is nobody under 13 without parental guidance can, get a ticket. And then rated R, which is 17 and older. But again, parents can bring in younger children
Doesn't
with
necessarily
guidance.
have to be parents either. It's 25.
Parent or guardian.
Yeah, 25 years old, you can buy a ticket for somebody under.
Well, it's dependent on the theater. It's 21. Some theaters it's 21. Some theaters it's 25. I've seen different restrictions. And then there's NC-17, which is no child under 17 can go see the movie, and that's considered like
any child over 17.
Yeah, and for a lot of films, that's kind of considered a black mark of death, because then the film is hardly marketable. It's not available for that wide audience under 17 years old. And a lot of times when movies will get rated that, they'll cut it down to a rated R.
Right.
So it's more marketable, quote unquote. Which is, but anyway. So
they still have rated X, I think, or triple X, don't they? Isn't that
NC-17 was the consolidation of that, I believe, because they used to have triple X, but NC-17 is essentially that now.
No more porn theaters around.
But yeah, porno theaters were destroyed by the internet.
Yes.
Okay, so basically we in I guess jolly old England, or the UK, basically we have universal U and parental guidance PG, which are fine for anyone to see. Then we have 12A, which replaced 12, which means you have to be over 12 to see it unless you're with a parent. And this came out about around when Sam Raimi's Spider-Man was released, because loads of under 12-year-olds complained. Then we have 15S and 18S, where there's no way you'll get it unless you're over that age. Okay, that's interesting. Thank you very much for that lesson in the rules of the BBFC. Also, from listening to your favorite directors and after seeing Dan's movie collection, it seems that you guys are mostly into mainstream stuff. Is that fair to say? Do you follow indie cinema? I do to a certain extent. I mean, if I hear about a movie, I hear about a lot more movies than I would say the average Joe hears about, and I try to seek them out whenever I can. But, I would say it's fair to say I've definitely seen far more mainstream films than independent films, but I would never discount an independent film, and if I've heard of it, and I do seek it out sometimes. So, how about you, Tom?
There's so many different ways I could go with this. Yes. It's getting very much harder to define what independent means. That's kind of the thing. Because independent...
Not released by a major studio, I believe,
right,
is the general...
that's what I was going to say. The independent term usually means something independent of the major studio system, the major 20 studios or whatever it is.
Independently financed.
Right, but, then there's the big independent films that have taken over all of the film festivals, so if you are a lower independent film, you have about a snowball's chance in hell of eclipsing these films. It's kind of difficult. Now, to try to keep it to his question... I don't, to me, and this goes to kind of what drives me in my film company, is that, to me, I'm not necessarily, handcuffed or enslaved to a movie that has names. So if there's a smaller time movie comes out that has a really good story or something like that, and I have heard of it, then I would be interested in going to see it. But that's the big thing. You don't... By nature, independent films are a little bit less marketed, so it's hard to find them, But if somebody were to come up to me and say, hey, this movie's really good, it's got this is the story, it's really great. You may not have heard of anybody in it, but, if the story interests me, then I'll definitely watch it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay, so continuing on with his email. I try to, well, he said, do you follow indie cinema? I try to, but indie films can be just as cliche as Hollywood ones, which is true.
Very true.
I find that I'm less interested in the realism, and I love more surreal cinema. I just discovered Wes Anderson, for example, and I'm starting to go through his back catalog. Wes Anderson is a interesting director. I've seen a few of his movies. Sometimes it's a little too, like, oh, I'm thinking outside of the box for me. But, he's a definitely a competent filmmaker, and I
mean
think
like intentionally, like I'm going outside of the box to
sometimes
go outside
his
the
stuff,
box?
yeah, sometimes his stuff is very just like two people sitting in a room, not staring at each other, talking.
Yeah,
like,
I've never, and that's
and it's really snappy dialogue, but it's just like, please, for the love of God, quit being so stylized. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, and that kind of goes to the whole independent thing too. I've never been into those kind of films, really. I mean, I don't. I like a story that somewhat makes sense. I don't mind existential kind of stuff when it's done a certain way, or whatever way it's done. If it makes, if it's a good story and it's well performed. But
yeah,
I've never been into the sort of the strict sort of art house quote unquote film that's it's just you don't quite get where it's going has no general mass appeal.
Wes has a very distinctive style, and all of his films do. It's kind of almost like Nolan. Nolan has a very distinctive visual style to his films because of Wally Pfister. But Wes is an interesting filmmaker, and I don't think he's made terrible movies or anything. I've seen The Life of Aquatic with Steve Zissou. I haven't seen the Royal Tenenbaums. That's the big that I think was one of his big breakout films. But I've seen a couple of them, and they're interesting to say the least. But and he's a really interesting guy. I've seen interviews with him, but I'm not crazy about his films. Anyway, okay. So I just discovered Wes Anderson, for example, and I'm starting to go through his back catalog. I also love practical effects. There's something about puppets and stop motion that I prefer over CGI, and there is something to be said about that. I think it's become CGI is not at a level where we can't tell it apart from live action yet. So in the meantime, I'd rather see the old-fashioned techniques because I find more art in them. I realize I probably sound extremely pretentious, which you don't. Don't worry about that. No. But I'd be interested in hearing your opinions on whether you like the storytelling or the art of filmmaking. On whether you like the storytelling or the art of filmmaking or plot or whatever it is you like about a film. I'm obviously not expecting to get read out because I'm rambling, but I'd love to hear back from you guys and hopefully start a conversation. Well, your email's been the one we've responded to most at this point. Anyway, once again, I love the episode and good luck with both of you on future episodes and your film careers.
What's this guy's name?
JoJo Jinx.
Very good email, Joe Jinx.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, so our opinions on whether we like storytelling or the art of filmmaking or plot or whatever it is you like about the film. That sentence was kind of weirdly put. I'm more of I love the actual, what goes into making a film. I love editing. I love directing. I love, forming the acting and all that stuff. But I just like the entertainment value of it. Like, I like to know that something I'm creating is telling a story that are getting people interested or, just entertaining them or making them think. I like that aspect of it. Almost like starting a conversation, kind of like this podcast. I just like kind of starting a conversation sort of thing.
Right.
So.
Oh, well, yes, and I'm completely 100,000,000% on board with you on that one. Mm-hmm. Not that I'm not usually on most things, but I've never had any sort of desire to be a filmmaker that was making films, with, sort of my vision or, my love of art. And I don't know why that is. Again, just because I've watched so many movies over the years, and the core thing for me is that the ones that I find most enjoyable are the ones that I found are the ones that are the most entertaining to me. Mm-hmm. And that kind of goes into when I write something, anything I write, generally speaking, I don't, has elements of myself and my experience in it, but I always try to go back to the point, will people be entertained by this? Because it's going on a screen that you would want audiences to see. This isn't for me and my, me and Dan and my dad to see. I want them to watch it, but I don't want them solely to be the only audience that would ever appreciate it. I want everybody that could possibly want to see a movie sit down and watch it and say, hey, that was a very entertaining movie, or that was at least a good movie. That's me in a nutshell, I guess.
Yeah. I agree. And sometimes even when you are making a film or something like that, you have to kind of keep those people out of your mind, like, me or Dad or something like that. I found when I'm making, stuff that I make, I can't be thinking, oh, my mom would think this is horrendous, or, oh, my dad would think this is weird.
Oh, yeah. No, I've gotten over that pretty easily. I will have to admit, though, there is something in the back of my mind, whether you're involved or not, where it says, do I think Dan would like this? Or do I think Dan would think this is a good idea, or this is stupid?
Yeah. So, well, keep me in mind, but, yes. Mom and Dad can be out of it.
Yes.
All right, so thank you very much, Joe, for that long and awesome email. This segment is going on a lot longer, so
I would
I'm definitely
think a little bit,
through.
but I am enjoying it. I think
this is fun. This is fun.
Make it a little bit more concise, I think.
Yes.
We'll talk about that off.
You guys need to quit sending long, thoughtful emails.
Yeah, quit putting effort into your questions.
Yes, because you're getting us to talk too long about things.
Just keep your questions limited to, are you two separate people or not?
Oh, yeah, we didn't even talk about that.
I didn't get into that.
Us sounding the same.
We are the same person. Spoiler.
Yes, spoiler alert. Okay, so next email. This is the last long email from Logan. And, okay, so, hey, my name is Logan. I just said that.
Hi, Logan.
And then he put a little smiley face emoticon. Okay.
I do that.
What I found cool about your podcast was that I have a lot of the same interests as you guys. I am a screenwriter writing for the screen that happens to be in my head. The episode caught my immediate attention when Dan uttered his love for Christopher Nolan's work, as well as his knowledge of his films. Following, which is Christopher Nolan's first, it is a feature, but it's a shorter feature. I think it's only about 70 minutes or so.
I can look at it. It's right there.
There you go. Okay, so Following is an excellent film of his that always gets overlooked, which frustrates me. It was a really, really refreshing moment to hear someone else but me acknowledge its existence. Nolan's psychological narratives have a way of incorporating the protagonists as someone who is the architect of their own demise. I'm trying to spit this out here.
Yes.
And I adore the connective tissue of the neo-noir genre throughout his films. Elements such as obsession, existentialism, philosophy, and overall mental instability are why he is one of my number one favorite filmmakers. The reason I write down so many words about Christopher Nolan is because without The Dark Knight, I wouldn't have discovered Heath Ledger. That is where it all began. His performance as the Joker was terrifying, unique, astonishing, and perfect. It sparked the first flame of my creative interest in filmmaking. And that's interesting he says that, because like you and I were kind of fans of Heath definitely before, we at least knew of him before The Dark Knight, with things like Knight's Tale and
yes.
What other movies was he in? There was other stuff
Brokeback
that
Mountain,
I had.
but we had
but like I hadn't seen Brokeback.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen Brokeback Mountain. But what other movies? Now you got to look them up for a second.
Yeah, because I could not. I remember The Knight's Tale, and I'm sure when you bring him up, 10 Things I Hate About You, I think he was in.
Yes, that might have been the other one that I have that on Blu-ray. 10 Things I Hate About You. That was a pretty. That was kind of a movie of my childhood almost. Yeah, I guess those were the big ones. But yeah, I mean, oh no, Patriot, The Patriot.
Oh yeah, jeez.
I can't believe I knew there was something. The Patriot is like a classic to Tom and I.
That's a classic Tom and Dan movie.
So I mean, when they announced that he was playing the Joker, it was like Anne Hathaway with Catwoman. I wasn't really worried. Some people were,
right?
But I wasn't really worried because I thought he would do something interesting with it. He exceeded my expectation of what he ended up doing, but I knew I wasn't really worried. Okay, so. Continuing on with the email. And so I eventually arrived at screenwriting, a vocation so awe-inspiring to me that I needed to expand my own cerebral vista. Man, this guy is...
Wordy dird.
Write a book, because this is some good stuff. Darren Aronofsky is one who employs a style that is closest to mine. His feature debut, Pi, managed to dig deeper into my understanding of the ruthless and maniacal intrusions of continual preoccupation. Man, this guy is His characters don't have a reputation of striving towards minuscule goals, and that recurring element of obsession, again, is something that fascinates. The companion pieces, The Wrestler and Black Swan, are what I call the duality perfection. Well, I do from now on, anyway. First of all, Mickey Rourke granted one of the greatest executions in acting that I have seen performed on screen in The Wrestler. And Tom might have something to say about that. You like The Wrestler, correct?
Oh, very much so. But, I mean, unless you want me to really get into it, I did. But I think it was very... I really can't put my word on it. I liked... It was very realistic in spots. Mm-hmm. However, it made people's perception of the wrestling business in general... Business. It made people's perception of the business drop.
Yeah.
Because it made it seem like this is everywhere. This is mm-hmm. how wrestling is. Mm-hmm. And for some people it is. But it drew on so many things that are just either a lot less prevalent in wrestling these days or were from 20 years ago, you know. Mm-hmm. So I like that it was as realistic as it could be in some spots. I think it was a little too general and a little too non-relevant to what is actually going on today in other spots.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Also, I want to bring up that Aronofsky is he's made a couple. Well, I've only seen of his movies all the way through The Wrestler and The Fountain, and The Fountain is kind of a tougher movie for a lot of people to like because it's a very kind of abstract film. Almost, it is a very abstract film, but I really love that movie, and that movie, like the idea of it all being just about accepting death, it was very interesting to me, and that's kind of what I took away from it. But I could see a lot of different people taking a lot of different things away from that movie, and I think that's kind of the mark of an interesting film, is when there's so many interpretations to it, and it's not just intentionally vague. It does have themes and ideas that I really liked. Also, I've seen a little bit of I've only watched the first maybe 40 minutes or so of Requiem for a Dream. And I stopped watching that because I was getting kind of nervous watching it. Like, I was actually... It's rare that a movie can actually instill any sort of, like, you know, actual, like, anxiety from me. The only two movies I can think that have actually been able to successfully do that is one, Brothers, and two, Requiem for a Dream. Like, I was actually getting anxious watching both of those movies. They're different movies, but it just has... like, I like when a filmmaker can kind of replicate that feeling of just pending doom and like this building of just like this not fear but just anxiety. Like, I was actually getting anxious watching it, so I stopped watching it, but I need to sit down and watch it because I gotta give it a chance. Anyway, continuing on with the email. Okay, so The Wrestler. It is a story about a lonely, largely forgotten man. He lives in a world that now opposes him at all turns, and it is unbearably sad to witness. Every scene brings about the word perfection, and that is the result of Aronofsky's eye for storytelling merged with character development to die for. Now, that's the first one. Second, I completely fell in love with The Black Swan. I haven't seen that.
I haven't either.
I've heard amazing things, but I have not seen it. And for the entirety of Natalie Portman's performance as Neo, you're in the Matrix, Neo. Mm-hmm. Nina, I fell in love with her character. Aronofsky's method of directing is complex, a complex piece of mastery. Second, oh wait, no, hold on. God, man, the way the text in this email looks, it's drawing my eyes to different places. His way of shaping characters from beginning to end keep a consistency, an emotional thread that leaves you with an experience of a story as thought-provoking and thrilling as the protagonists themselves. This guy needs to like write a film article or something, or film article somewhere. Okay, and that's my letter. Interests and analyses. I didn't think it would unfold in such a weird way. Thank you. That's my head for you. I very much look forward to the next episode of the podcast. My suggestions of topics are Nolan's new project Interstellar, which is Nolan tackling a time travel movie, which seems very interesting to me, so that'll be interesting. Shia LaBeouf's turning around a new leaf with his acting career. Real acid trip scene in The Necessary Death of Charlie Countryman. I haven't even heard of that movie, but he was good in Lawless. And an unsimulated sex unsimulated sex in Von Trier's Nymphomaniac. I've heard of that. I know of Lars von Trier. He's a very weird filmmaker. But anyway, and the Assassin's Creed film with Michael Fassbender as star and producer. And then he signs off with Cat Speed. Cat Speed, Logan. Cat Speed.
Indeed.
I'm sure we'll talk about more. I will talk about more of the Assassin's Creed thing when more stuff comes out and so on and so forth as more news arises. So thank you very much, Logan. That was a long, very verbose and loquacious and very spot on email. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Logan.
And the last email comes from Dylan. Which this one was sent about 7 hours ago, so he hardly made it into the show.
Well, gee whiz, he wouldn't have if we hadn't had our delay.
Yes. What is each of your opinions on the 1994 movie Clerks, Kevin Smith as a director? I love the podcast. I love movie I'm saying podcast, but he put pod and pods. But I'm just going to say podcast. Yeah. I love movie podcasts in general, and I think yours could be the caliber of Smodcast, which is Kevin Smith's podcast. Have a great day, Tom and Daniel. First off, thank you.
Thanks.
And second of off, the Smodcast was actually a mild inspiration for me to do this. I've been listening to a lot of Kevin Smith stuff recently, and that's kind of what made me kind of want to get off my duff and finally actually do this podcast after Tom and I talking about doing it for a little bit. So, have you seen Clerks, Tom?
No.
Clerks,
which I know is sacrilege, considering that I'm an independent filmmaker who
also the fact that you're kind of a Kevin Smith,
think like Kevin Smith somewhat. So
yeah,
yes, I probably
you've
need
read
to
stuff.
watch it at some point.
You definitely should. It's a very good movie. I really love Clerks. It's a great film, and I'm excited that he's doing Clerks 3 if things work out as his last film. He was going to do a hockey movie called Hit Somebody, but he's turned that into a miniseries, and now Clerks 3 is going to be his last film. So Clerks and Clerks 2, both very good movies. My criticism against Clerks 2 is it followed too much of the same story arc as the first one. It kind of went down the same path and ended the same way. And I thought that was kind of a cop-out, no pun intended, because he directed Cop-Out. So Kevin Smith, definitely an inspirational guy.
Loved Red State.
Red State was amazing. I really liked Red State. It's kind of sad that he's ending with Clerks 3 because, all of his movies were very similar up to Red State, and then Red State was really a departure for him. So it's sad to see that he has that kind of potential to do different genres. And then he's kind of, leaving film, and he's going to go off and do, still do his podcast thing and maybe work in television and stuff like that. So it's sad to see him go, but so Kevin Smith, I like the guy. The end. That was a long email segment, but
that was almost an hour.
Almost. It was probably about 50 minutes or so.
Somewhere in that range.
So, yes. So thank you for that. Again, if you guys want to email in, odds of you getting read are pretty good for the most part if you send in a good email. And I guess, in the future we'll probably have to save emails and read them in future shows. So a backup may, like our back catalog might start to develop.
Either way,
here.
more than likely, at some point, one way or another, you will be replied, read, or yes.
Either on the show or in email form. So that is Gidlow Show at gmail.com, gidlowshow@gmail.com.
Yes.
And that moves us on to news. Obviously, the biggest piece of news.
I got to read a couple of comments here that I've pulled.
Tom, okay.
Yes, of course.
Tom wants to do comments.
Just real quick, this is a real brief through. I just copied a few comments from the YouTube video itself that I found somewhat interesting. I'm just going to run through these real quick. This is from StarFalco13. Who knows? The Gidlow brothers might take the place of the Coen brothers in the far future. What do you think about that? You like it?
I think we could beat the Coen brothers.
Oh, I know we could beat the Coen brothers.
I don't know. Those guys are geniuses.
Yeah, they're good, but I think we could at some point eventually we could rise to the level. UC lowercase d3ad. I don't know what that's supposed to stand for. Says that Dan Thomas Z, Seamus, and some guy named Alkist Breach should do a video just to F with people who can't differentiate their voices. Good. Yes.
That used to, a lot of people said it sounded like Z and Seamus.
We would all
stuff.
sound exactly the same, apparently.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Let's see here. One of the more funny ones that I thought were somewhat humorous to myself. Bass Treble seems to think that we should have a theme song, and it should go something like this: rating movies high and low. Welcome to the Gidlow Show.
It says Gidlow Movie Show, doesn't it?
It does. See, look at that. I completely botched it.
But it's saying, like, rating movies high and low. Welcome to the Gidlow Show.
Gidlow Movie Show.
Gidlow Movie Show throws off the tempo.
That's true. That's why I just completely ignored it. Yes, Jonathan Miller says that I have one of those rich guy laughs. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Thurston Howell the third kind of thing. Maybe I guess.
Oh, my.
Gave you a dislike says that I have a great voice for radio. I also have a great face for radio, so thank you very much. And Black192 says we need a song to end it off. Theme music at the beginning or end? Maybe. I don't know. Not really.
Maybe down the line, but currently there are no plans to do that.
Yeah, so
I kind of like the dryness of this presentation.
For once and for all, we'll get off the comments questions for the moment, but I just wanted to say, personally, thank you for all of the awesome comments, emails, tweets, everything that we got. It was awesome spending the first few days after the video posted on YouTube, going through and reading all the comments and pulling some of the ones. So, love the comments. Keep them coming. Comment, tweet, all of that stuff. Do not stop.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much, guys. We love you. All right, so now on to news.
Here we go.
Take it away. No, okay, so the biggest piece of news is that J.J. Abrams has been confirmed to be the director for Star Wars. Now, Tom and I could not wait to talk about this. So the day it was announced, we sat down, did a pre-recorded segment of the show, and kind of gave our thoughts on the whole J.J. Star Wars thing. So take it away, me from the past.
Woo.
All right, so thank you, Future Dan, for that amazing setup. You're a sexy, beautiful person. He can't respond, though, so yeah.
It's open to debate. Yeah.
So, yeah, okay, so our big thing that we could not wait to talk about that we recorded a few days before the actual podcast is that J.J. Abrams has been officially announced as the director of Star Wars Episode 7, the Curse of the Continuing Sequels.
Wow.
Big.
That's pretty big.
All right, that's huge news, and Tom and I like to talk about things, and I didn't want to talk about it before we recorded it, so that's why we're doing it early.
Yes, we have not mentioned it other than in just mentioning the name of the director. That's it, J.J. Abrams.
So, okay, we, as you guys knew from last week's podcast, we're huge Star Trek fans. J.J. currently is the helmer for Star Trek. He did the last 2 Star Trek movies, which we haven't seen the next one yet, but I wish we would. Maybe we can get an early screening or something like that. I was going to
say, where's our advanced copy now that we're all famous?
We're famous from this. So we're big, huge Star Trek fans. Tom and I love what JJ's done with Star Trek, and we didn't even mention once Star Wars last podcast, and I think you were more into Star Wars growing up than I was, I think.
Yeah, I think maybe. I probably had watched it more. I don't know that I was really into it. I mean, we had the video game, too. We had the video game for Super Nintendo. But I don't know.
That was mine. That was mine, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had Super Star Wars Return of the Jedi. That game was awesome.
Yes, I still remember fondly the many, many hours that I played on that game. But I was still, even then, I think I was much more into Star Trek than I ever was into Star Wars.
Yeah. But I mean, we grew up watching them is the thing.
Yeah.
I really loved the first 3. You and I went through and watched the original 3. What is it? 4, 5, and 6.
Yes.
When you got them for me on Blu-ray, which they kind of ruined by adding other stuff to it since, but whatever. And I found that I really didn't like Return of the Jedi as much. Return of the Jedi used to be my favorite, but that's when I was a kid, and I think that was because it was the most playful and jokey one.
Isn't it weird how, the trilogies, they don't really, sometimes they don't stand up.
Yeah.
They don't age very well. It's the same thing with us, like Back to the Future. I used to think the third one was like one of the better ones. Then we recently went back and watched them, like, what is this crap?
Oh, I really like the third. I really like the third Back to the Future, though. The second one is the one that's just completely contrived. And it's just like, let's go to the future to change history. That doesn't make any sense. So it's just like, let's make 2 movies. But anyway, I think there has to be a sense of nostalgia. Like, I mean, I have nostalgia with Star Wars, but I'm not as close to it as I am with Star Trek. So I can't like block out that criticalness in my mind as much as I can for Star Trek.
Right.
So
but, I mean, that's the thing. They're completely 2 different things. I mean, everybody knows that they're completely 2
yeah,
different
but
things.
they're always compared, and I don't like when people can't divorce themselves from that sometimes. But I can, but
I think historically, I don't think there's too much debate that story-wise, I don't think there's ever been any question which one has been like quote unquote better. But
no, you're gonna start some sort of flame war.
Well,
now.
I might be starting something here, but I mean, just
I mean, Star Wars and Star Trek.
Star Wars, were the prequels that were made were glorified special effects stories, and which is fine. It was entertaining, but there's never been. They've never hit, a story quite like Star Trek has, at least in my opinion.
In your opinion, let's just preface that with it's Tom's opinion. His opinion does not
do
not reflect
not
this
necessarily
podcast.
Those of Daniel Gidlow.
Oh man, no, but I mean, both of them have equally rich universes. I mean, one of the biggest things about Star Wars is it has like such a huge universe, and so many, just like Star Trek, so many storytellers have kind of gone into that universe and really fleshed it out. I mean, George obviously, did a lot of stuff, but he got the further he went on, the worse he got, kind of thing. In my opinion,
that's fair.
But anyway, but they're still all equally. They're not terrible movies. I haven't seen the first. Well, not the first 3. I haven't seen the prequels in so long, and I do not have good memories of them. So I have to go sit down. I did get them more recently, so I have to sit down and watch them. But anyway, so JJ directing Star Wars. What does this mean for the franchise? First off, I love that that George has sold off the franchise, because one of the best things about the Star Wars franchise, whenever I see people like other storytellers other than George get their hands into it, because I think they could tell more interesting stories. I love the idea of Star Wars and everything, but it just, in my opinion, George hasn't done anything good to it in the last 40, 30 years, however long it's been.
Well, yeah, and I think, to go to that point, I think it, just on the surface, hearing, JJ is going to be directing these things. Yeah. That's knowing what he's been able to do in the past, whether you like him or whether you don't. He's done some pretty good stuff, and to be able to know that he's going to be, bringing what he can bring into what's already been laid out in the Star Wars universe, especially since they're going to be sequels.
Yeah.
The possibilities, at least on the outset of production, are limitless right now.
Well, there's apparently, and I haven't really seen too much Star Wars stories outside of, the movies, but apparently I guess there was a series of novels and maybe even comics that took place after the movies, like Han and Leia went off and had kids and stuff like that. And a lot of people were kind of wondering if that's canon, because I think it was considered canon, but I'm not sure.
I think Abrams would probably have a little bit of respect for that, even if it's not considered canon. Yeah. But if it is, I mean, Abrams has shown with Star Trek that he's very well versed in what Star Trek is and all of the material that, I mean, I'm sure they didn't.
He's far more versed in Star Wars, because that's, I guess, was his main interest. Star Trek was something he was kind of schooled on, as it were, by the writers.
Sure, but it goes to his approach. If you watch back the first movie and the first 9 minutes of this movie, you can kind of pull little things from all kinds of Star Trek episodes. Now, there's been retreads in Star Trek lore. I mean, there have been original series that have been retread and redone in different ways for different series and stuff. But he said beforehand that they had really gone back and versed themselves. They watched all of the original series. They watched all of the movies. They watched parts of other of the series. Yeah. So, he's very well versed in what he takes on, regardless of whether or not he's 100% fanboy into it or not.
Yeah,
this is a little different.
It's one of those things where it's like, he was well versed when he went into Star Trek. This is something he's passionate about. I mean, a lot of people said he made his Star Wars movie when he made Star Trek. Like, he kind of a lot of people thought he kind of dipped into, tried to kind of highlight the more Star Warsy aspect of Star Wars, and that was like with him.
Well, he put R2-D2 in the movie.
James Seamus and I sat down and watched that recently, and I paused it on the projector screen. I was like, look who that is. And they're like, what? I can't see it. But
so they didn't know.
No. Well, I showed them and they saw it, but it's really exciting. I think he could. One of my favorite things about him is he's a really flashy filmmaker. He's a popcorn filmmaker, but at the same time, at the heart of any story, he understands that there needs to be interesting and good characters. You could say anything you want about him being like a very aesthetic-driven filmmaker, and the fact that he just kind of makes good action popcorny flicks. But the guy really, I think, understands that characters need to be the strong part of the story, no matter how good your visual effects are and all that stuff. But I'm kind of interested to see what he'll do with a visual style. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I hope it's not like a lens flare fest like Star Trek was." But hopefully,
has he really done lens flares in almost every movie?
Yeah. Well, since I think Mission Impossible 3, he's been very lens flary. So hopefully he tries to establish a different visual style. I don't know though, but he's always been kind of a crooked lens flary kind of dude. Like he goes everywhere with that camera usually. So I'm hoping he tries to kind of establish a different look for it. Different from the previous Star Wars, kind of give it a bit of that kinetic energy he brings, but at the same time, try to make it different from Star Trek, because I don't know, I'm mildly afraid that it's just going to look like what he's done with Star Trek and Mission Impossible.
Yeah, I don't think, I think, again, like goes to you that this is something that he has an extreme amount of passion for. I think having said that, I think this is going to probably be his standalone sort of thing. I don't think you'll see similarities. It's hard not to see similarities, but especially concerning Star Trek, I think these are going to be two completely separate styles. It's so huge of its own sort of universe. You're going to get the intro, you're going to get the scrolling, words and all of that.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's just my thought that it's going to be something that ends up standing alone. My only fear of the whole thing is that it's not a fear. It's like a mild critique. Previous people that had the Star Trek universe in their grasp and were able to do whatever they wanted, movie shows, you didn't see them generally taking on a lot of other projects. It was Star Trek was their thing. Mm-hmm. And I think that might have a small part of a reason why they were so successful was because this was their quote unquote their passion. JJ does all kinds of different things. Mm-hmm. So my only sort of maybe mild critique is that it kind of puts something in the back of my mind where it's like, is Star Trek going to suffer for this? Because he's going to be doing more than likely at least 3 more movies with Star Wars. I don't think he's going to do one and then just drop it. Yeah. So he's going to be – this is massive project here. He does all his other stuff, and then he's also has Star Trek. So is Star Trek going to suffer any ill effects from this?
There's already an example for that. Mission Impossible 3. He directed Mission Impossible 3, reinvigorated the franchise, really put his touch on it, and some people might not have liked it, but I loved Mission Impossible 3. I really thought he brought not a different perspective, but a different kind of breath of fresh air into the franchise, because Mission Impossible 2 sucked. And yes. But the thing was, when I really like a movie, like a franchise movie like that, anybody wants that director to come back. It's just like, like with Star Trek, Into Darkness, I was so happy JJ came back because I really like Star Trek. But he directed Mission Impossible 3, didn't come back. He stayed on as an executive producer. And I think, even knowing Ghost Protocol, which was an excellent movie in my opinion, I don't know if it was as good as I don't know if it was as good as Mission Impossible 3, but it was still a really good movie.
It was right there with it. I think, yeah.
So I mean, it's pretty obvious that he knows I think since he's kind of the guy behind Star Trek now, and Paramount probably still wants him to stick around as the guy behind Star Trek, I think he'll bring on the right creative people to keep that kind of in the same vein that he's kind of put it in. One of the big things was a lot of people were saying they wanted Brad Bird, the guy who directed Ghost Protocol, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. He was kind of the fan favorite because Brad Bird directed The Incredibles and The Iron Giant, and Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol was his first live action film, and a lot of people thought he nailed it, which I don't think he's made a bad movie yet. Also, you would know that he was a creative consultant on The Simpsons for like the longest time.
I do believe I remember that. That's true.
Brad Bird. So I think he has a good eye for appointing somebody who really will care about it, and not just somebody who's just going to come in and be like, and fuck it up.
And again, if we had sat and fleshed all of this out, I would have thought of that too. But or I would have thought it out a little further. But I didn't even think to. It never even really occurred to my mind that he would move off of the director's seat in Star Trek. He would. I like you said. I would imagine that since he has such a vested interest in it now, that he would remain involved in some form or fashion. Probably not to the level that he is now, but that might not necessarily be a bad thing. Yeah. It might be a good thing to see another director after. But let me ask you this: do you think that'll be his last directed Star Trek film, Into Darkness? Do you think he'll do another one, or now that's all his focus is?
Well, the idea for Disney is, I think, to make a new Star Wars movie every 2 years. That's their plan. That is kind of what their mission statement is.
Oh, like more than 3?
Well,
or just 3 and 2. Like
they're
two,
currently
two, two.
Planning a new trilogy, but I doubt they'll leave it at just 3.
Probably so. Disney probably.
But the biggest thing,
George, probably.
But the biggest thing is the trilogy aspect. Is it's a story within those 3 movies, like a story arc. So,
right.
I'm sure JJ will at least be around for the next 3 unless something happens, I bet. I don't think he's signed on for more than one, but I doubt he'll want to step away from it once he's started the story.
Well, plus this is pretty breaking. By the time we actually air the show, it might be more fleshed out as opposed to what his deal is.
That's true.
But at the moment, all we know is that he's going to be directing the first film.
It was just announced today. And one of the big surprising things was I had read a few weeks ago. I think it was November. No, it was in November. That JJ it was when everybody was like, "Oh, who's going to direct it? Who's going to direct it?" News sources were contacting all of the rumored people like Jon Favreau. And even I think David Fincher was approached, and like random directors.
David Mamet was David Mamet.
David Mamet is his name Mamet? I thought it was Mamet.
No, it's Mamet. I just for some
David
reason
Mamet.
David
Mamet.
Oh
God!
This film.
Star Wars.
How hilarious would that be?
It would be old Luke and old
Al
Han
Pacino,
just swear at each other the entire time. Oh, that would be hilarious.
Oh man. I'd go see
we
that.
We didn't even talking about Glengarry Glen Ross when we were talking about our movie history.
That
was
we
more
must
recent.
Talk
though.
about at some point.
Anyway, we'll talk about that at some point. But all these news sources were getting everybody's comment, and JJ, a lot of people were turning it down. It's like, no, they haven't come to me, or no, I don't. I'm not interested in directing. And JJ said he wouldn't do it. Essentially, I could read the quote. It was from Hollywood Life. He talked to Hollywood Life, and he said, "Look, Star Wars is one of my favorite films or favorite movies of all time. I frankly almost feel that in a weird way, the opportunity for whomever it is to direct that movie, it comes with the burden of being that kind of iconic movie and series. I was never a big Star Trek fan growing up, so for me, working on Star Trek didn't have any of that, almost fatal sacrilege, and so I'm looking forward more than anyone to the next iteration of Star Wars, but I believe I will be going as a paying moviegoer." So it's kind of interesting.
I mean, but it's not like he flat out said that he would never do it.
That's true, but he almost said that...
I'm never going to do this. I'm not doing it. Stop asking me the question.
He almost said that he was kind of too close to it to feel like, that, like he said, almost fatal sacrilege. Like, it was just like...
I guess... Yeah, I couldn't. I don't know. I don't think I could ever feel too close to something to not want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is your lifelong. This is really was the thing that really inspired him. So I mean, this has got to be. I can't even imagine what he's thinking right now.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because he's usually like the kind of guy who will be inspired by something like Spielberg and then kind of create something in his own voice that is reminiscent of that, love for whatever, but not necessarily directly that. Like Super 8 was his love note essentially to Spielberg movies.
Right.
And he worked with Spielberg on it. So where was I going with that? But yeah, no, that's kind of like, but he's never worked, I think, directly on something that he's loved. Like, I think, I want to say, Alias was almost kind of like his Mission Impossible. And then he actually got to work on Mission Impossible. So, I mean, I guess it's
there you go.
That sort of thing.
You mean he didn't love Cloverfield?
He didn't direct Cloverfield.
Oh.
He was a producer. A lot of people make that mistake that JJ directed Cloverfield. He was just a big creative force behind it, and he was a producer and so on. But it was directed by
I don't remember. I couldn't tell you.
Oh man,
the guy that held the camera. I don't know.
No, it was not directed by the guy who held the camera. It was directed by Matt Reeves, who I believe directed Cabin in the Woods as well. Which I don't think you've seen Cabin. No, he didn't direct Cabin in the Woods. Never mind. I'm completely wrong on that. Anyway, hi, I'm Dan, full of misinformation. So
that's right. We give you all kinds of information. You got to go out there and figure out which is right and which is wrong.
So ultimately, I think we're coming down to a wind down here. We've been talking about this for about 20 minutes now. Essentially, it's the prospect of a new Star Wars movie is really exciting. The prospect of JJ directing that Star Trek movie or Star Wars movie. Did I say Star Trek before?
You did, and now here we go.
Oh,
this is going to be because now they're just at least for the moment they are somewhat.
It's going to be so confusing. Well, at least it's easy to remember who directed Star Trek. J.J. Abrams. Who directed Star Wars? J.J. Abrams. All right.
There you go.
Maybe he'll just call this new one just Star Wars, like he did with Star Trek.
I would imagine it'll be Episode 7.
Okay, so the prospect of JJ directing a Star Wars movie is very exciting. I can't remember who's the writer they have lined up with this. It's being written by Michael Arndt. He has like a weird name that I can't. Yeah, but he worked
you
on
and the letter T don't really work that.
Yeah, but he wrote Toy Story 3 and Brave and Little Miss Sunshine. Like he has kind of like this almost indie good movie credits.
Yes. Toy Story 3 made me cry, so I am looking forward.
Made you what?
I said Toy Story 3 made me cry.
Yeah, well, it made me cry too, but I'm bad with goodbyes. But you know, supposedly there might be a Toy Story 4. So
really,
I think that's something that's always rumbling around. It's kind of like Toy Story 3 was always rumbling around, and then finally
Indiana Jones, same thing.
Yeah. So I think we're both really excited to go see that movie. So
yes, I will definitely go see it. It's like Into Darkness. I will be there Friday night or Thursday night or whenever the first night comes out. Yeah. And if I can get a ticket, I will probably be there for Star Wars opening night as well.
Excellent. All right. Well, back to me, future Dan.
And future Tom. Hi.
Alrighty, so those were our thoughts on the whole Star Wars thing. And I'm future Dan, or present Dan. Or actually, technically, past Dan now for those listening. So a couple follow-ups to this whole J.J. Abrams Star Wars Star Trek thing. We touched on the fact that we weren't sure if I said I was pretty sure that J.J. would come back and produce and stay on as producer for the next Star Trek film, and that is officially announced now. He has come out and said that he still will be sticking around to produce the film for the next Star Trek movie, and so that's kind of the confirmation there. But Tom and I wanted to talk a little bit about, since we were talking about the future of the Star Wars franchise, and we touched a little bit on the future of the Star Trek franchise, we wanted to talk a little bit about who we would think would be good to take over for the Star Trek 3, essentially, or Star Trek, I guess 13, would it be? It
would be. Yes. The 13th film.
Okay, so, you know... Yes. And Tom had brought up somebody pretty interesting. Who all were you thinking? Did you name more than one person?
I named a couple just off the top of my head. I think Joss Whedon was one of them.
He's going to be tied up with the Avengers, though. Like,
yes. No, just I was just throwing out names. Just because it would be kind of cool to see what he would do with it.
Yeah.
I can't remember who the other one was.
Zack Snyder was the other person.
Yeah, there you go.
Snack Ryder. Zack Ryder. Zack Ryder. Woo, woo, woo. Anyway, wrestling. Zack Snyder. Tom had brought up Zack Snyder, and I think that'd be a pretty interesting choice. I like that He's almost like JJ, where he has a really strong visual sense, but understands that characters are pretty important too. And I'm a fan of his, except for when he kind of goes off on his own and makes his own things, like Sucker Punch. Sucker Punch was not, in my opinion, that great.
What about Wally Pfister? Isn't he getting into directing?
Wally Pfister is getting into directing. I can't remember the name or what his movie. I actually think the plot of his film is kind of tightly under wraps. He's kind of learned a thing or two from Christopher Nolan.
Yes.
That would be interesting, but I don't know if sci-fi is his bag. I don't really know what his interests are.
Well, plus, I would think it'll probably be someone decently within the family, so to speak, for the 13th movie, for the third Abrams film.
Yeah.
It wasn't a lot of people were talking about Brad Bird or being
for Star Wars.
Oh, okay, that was. For
but
Star
I mean,
Wars.
but he also JJ brought him on to direct for Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. So right. Brad Bird would be interesting. Again, I don't really know how close he is to Star Trek.
What about Brian Grazer?
He's a producer.
Oh, he doesn't direct anymore?
Did Brian Grazer direct?
Or Ron Howard? I don't know why, but for some reason...
Brian Grazer and Ron Howard, they're like producing partners on a lot of stuff.
Gotcha.
I'm almost certain Brian Grazer has never directed anything.
No,
and
I
if
don't
he
know. I was
has,
just trying to throw some stupid name out of the top.
Mr. Crazy Hair himself, Brian Grazer. He has the craziest hair. Anyway, yeah, I don't know who would be my pick.
But yeah, no, I remember though, regardless of who the director is going to be, remember my initial thought of it was sort of a trepidation because it would be, it was weird that I'd have trepidation that it would be someone other than J.J. Abrams because I've been such a fan of his first film, and now the second one looks just as good, if not better. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, this happened quite a bit with the first 10. They had different directors.
For a lot of them, yeah.
For a lot, yeah. Nicholas Meyer was one, and they, of course, Leonard Nimoy.
Yeah. And infamously, William Shatner.
Well, yes. You know what? I almost forgot about that.
Final Frontier.
He did direct The Final Frontier, which is why that's largely seen, I would suppose, as one of the worst ones. Not to say that he would be bad, but that's a whole nother story. I almost said William Riker directed one. That would be
Jonathan
Frakes. Yeah. And then, of course, later on it was John Logan.
No.
He wrote it.
Stuart Baird.
Stuart Baird.
They should bring back Stuart Baird. Oh, man.
Stuart Baird should come back for the new one.
Forget any of the other ones. Not Zack Snyder, not Brad Bird. I want Stuart Baird to direct Star Trek 3 and keep up that kinetic energy.
Oh, yes.
I think Nemesis was pretty. I think it was pretty visually interesting, and I think they did some cool stuff visually on that.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. Regardless of it, I think they have set themselves on the path to where it'll be intriguing, and I'm sure it'll do just fine.
Yeah. No worries here. I'm incredibly worried. Okay, so keeping on the J.J. Abrams path here, I thought it was interesting. It was announced today that I guess JJ his production company Bad Robot Productions had picked up the rights to an upcoming book called Cycle of Lies: The Fall of Lance Armstrong, which obviously focuses on Lance Armstrong, and apparently he's been talking back and forth with Bradley Cooper to potentially star in it. So that'd be pretty interesting. I haven't been following.
That is ridiculously interesting.
I haven't been following this whole Lance Armstrong Armstrong thing so much. Tom had brought this to my attention a little bit because I had no idea. But it's funny. Bradley Cooper said he'd definitely be interested in playing Armstrong, and he said, "quote I think he's fascinating. What a fascinating character."
Well, if any of you listening to this actually watched his interview on the Oprah show, you would probably agree with that assertion because he did seem to be playing the role of some nefarious character. Mm-hmm. He doesn't seem very genuine, which is something odd because I was always one of his biggest fans. Not that I religiously follow cycling or anything.
Yeah, but he was an inspiration.
He was a very inspirational thing, and every time somebody asked him or all this, I vehemently believed him. I didn't know that much about him, but again, I wore the Livestrong bracelet and all of that stuff, but just completely destroyed all of that when he came on the show, and all the recent stuff coming out and all that. But it would make, depending on where they go with it, I don't know anything about the book, but depending on where they go with it, it would be talk about ripped from the headlines. That would be a pretty big movie.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be interesting to see Bradley Cooper kind of tone up and play. That would
tone
be
up, yeah,
tone up in the sense that he'd have to be a lean guy. No. But I mean, Bradley Cooper almost has kind of one of those more muscly kind of physiques, sort of thing. He's kind of.
I don't think you could ever actually look like Lance Armstrong did in his heyday. Have you ever seen him?
No, that's what I was saying.
Cycling,
it'd be interesting to see him
weird looking. Just vein. He's all veins.
Yeah,
like he doesn't have much mass. It's just.
I'd almost say Matthew Fox, how Matthew Fox looked in that Alex Cross movie, which I haven't seen yet, but I ordered on Blu-ray.
There you go.
Yeah, he looked, I think, more physically like Lance Armstrong, but yeah. So that's definitely, I'll be keeping an eye out for that. I'm sure that'll be good. So yeah, that. This is kind of like I have two different kind of Marvel related things, superhero sort of things, and this does touch on TV a little bit. Currently, they're filming the pilot episode for the television show called Marvel's Shield that focuses on. It takes place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that they've been creating, with the Avengers. And they're going to be focusing on kind of the day-to-day operations of S.H.I.E.L.D. And it's the pilot's being written, I think, directed by Joss Whedon. And he's going to,
by day-to-day, do you mean like the business aspects?
Not boring stuff. It's going to be an action show. Yes. It's just Samuel Jackson standing around going, "Get that paperwork done, motherfucker."
It's a very very office-like, very procedural drama.
So far, the only person reported from the movies to be in the show, and there's going to be a bit of spoilers if you haven't seen the Avengers, is Agent Coulson. And if you've seen them, and it takes place after the events of the Avengers, so if you've seen that movie, that kind of doesn't. They're going to have some explaining to do with
I
why
would imagine
he's there.
So, because he was very dead, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was quite dead. So either they completely faked his death, or they were talking about he might be like a robot or something like that. Well, there's a character who I guess worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. or something like that called, I think, the Vision, who was essentially an android. And the actor Clark Gregg had commented on that rumor, and he was like, "I wouldn't," and he essentially said, "I wouldn't want to come back as a robot. Like I wouldn't." Yeah. One of the fun things about playing the character was that he was kind of that crazy character. He had a lot of smart alecky stuff, and he was kind of beloved to all the people who watch the movies, and Joss Whedon kind of has that reputation of killing off beloved characters. When we went and saw it at the midnight thing, it was the marathon of all the Marvel movies up to that point, or the Avengers Marvel movies. Right. And when Coulson got stabbed, somebody in the audience went, "Whedon!" Like somebody seriously shook his fist in the air and said that.
That's what's going to happen when you make movies specifically for the fanboys. They're going to fanboy right in the theater.
It was funny. So that'll be interesting. But currently, Kobe Smulders, who played Agent Maria Hill, she was the girl in the girl S.H.I.E.L.D. officer directly under Samuel Jackson, if you remember who that is. She's in talks to be on the show as well, so that'll be interesting to see how that works out, because she's on How I Met Your Mother, and she's going to be in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, because the next Captain America movie is going to be have a lot of a S.H.I.E.L.D. influence in there. I guess he's going to be working with S.H.I.E.L.D. and stuff, and I want to say Scarlett Johansson is also set to be in that as well. So it'll be interesting. I love that they're creating this gigantic interconnected universe, and I hope they have some good cameos on the show. They better have random cameos from the movie, the movie stars essentially. Captain America pop up every once in a while. That'd be interesting, but I doubt that'll happen. But it would be cool. So
this is true.
So Yeah, I just want to touch that. Moving on with the Marvel update aspect of this. Anna Paquin, Ellen Page, and Sean Ashmore are returning for the new X-Men movie, X-Men Days of Futures Past, which is going to be a juggernaut of a movie with all these actors. Days of Futures Past is essentially a sequel to X-Men First Class. So it still takes place in the past, but there's kind of almost a rift in time sort of thing, where it's going to be all of these huge actors. Ian McKellen's returning as Magneto. Patrick Stewart is returning as Xavier. James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender are going to be playing the younger versions. Hugh Jackman is signed on.
Of course.
It's like this crazy... This is going to be so amazing. And it'll be interesting because the Wolverine, the new Wolverine movie called The Wolverine, actually takes place... Like, a lot of people thought it was going to be a prequel sort of thing. It actually takes place after Last Stand. So it's going to be interesting to see all these movies kind of interconnect and see how they connect.
X-Men does it quite like no other, I think, here. There's so many different branch off points that they can make films with. Yeah. And they are going in several different directions. It's pretty cool. It's
going to be awesome to see them connect the prequel and, the actual, original films together. It was funny because Bryan Singer has been kind of announcing casting bits through tweets, and what he in his tweet announcing that Anna Paquin was coming back as Rogue and Ellen Page was what is Ellen Page? Kitty Pryde, and then Sean Ashmore is Iceman. He thanked Brett Ratner in his tweet for not killing them off. He said,
I think I did see that in an article.
He said thank you for having their characters survive. Which I thought was funny, because we all know Jean Grey died at the end of Last Stand, and Patrick Stewart blew up too. So let's see how he returns. Although there was an after the credits thing that hinted at him returning. So
that's too bad because, like I always say to my brother, Famke Janssen does not age. She is still hot.
She does not age. She said that earlier. Shortly
I think I said that last. Yeah, I did.
Shortly before we started recording, I think either that or earlier. Mm-hmm. Anyway. That's neither here nor there. So anyway, that's very exciting. I'm really excited for X-Men. First Class was an excellent movie. I really enjoyed First Class. And, Wolverine, X-Men Origins Wolverine, that movie was poop. And I didn't mind Last Stand as much as a lot of people did. A lot of people didn't like Last Stand. I didn't think it was terrible, but it wasn't the same feel as the other ones. So that, Thomas.
Indeed.
That's pretty much all the news. That was far shorter than the email section.
So we're all told pretty much even.
Pretty much. I mean, Star Wars was the big chunk of our news section. And so that's all the news. So I think from here we move on to recommendations.
Sweet.
Do you want to lead that off, Thomas?
Sure. My recommendation this week is it seems like it's a little bit a little known film, though it has recently become instant streamable on Netflix.
Oh, has it?
Yes.
We need to watch that.
Yeah, we saw this on there a couple of weeks ago. I have not checked it within the last little bit, but as of about a week and a half ago, it was definitely instant streamable, which I thought was awesome because not only for this show, but I also have a copy on my desktop, so I can watch it whenever I want to. But
how do you have a copy on your desktop, sir?
I don't know. It just magically appeared there. I think it came with the laptop. It was some sort of deal or something.
The professional edition of, the laptop.
Right. Yes. It is definitely instant streamable, so I have just made note to check that out. It is Glengarry Glen Ross. Came out in 1992, so it's a little bit out. It's an older one. It has an amazing cast, just simply awesome. Jack Lemmon, in probably his most un-Jack Lemmon role you'd ever see him in. Al Pacino, Ed Harris, Alan Arkin, and of course Alec Baldwin's in it. Who's the other guy? I can't think of his name.
Kevin Spacey.
Oh, Kevin Spacey's in it. Yes.
Ed Harris. Other one. And Ed Harris.
I already said Ed Harris.
And Alan Arkin.
No.
And Al Pacino. It's on
the tip of my tongue. The guy that was in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
And, I don't know that guy's name.
Yeah. No, I don't know what his name is.
I don't.
It's on the. I don't know.
He played the father in the Pirates movies. He's a smaller character in that movie, though.
No, I know. He only has a bit part. But anyway, I had not seen it. I had the way that I, oddly enough, got any sort of knowledge from the film at all was Al Pacino soundboards.
Yeah, we used to be soundboarders. Like, whenever we were talking, I'd always pull one up, and you had done prank call stuff. And
all the time. Like, I was very big on the Jim Rome prank calls and stuff like that, but the Al Pacino soundboard was always hilarious, and it was the biggest one. It had all kinds of clips.
Fuck.
Just like that one. And I was... One day, I was always curious as to. I don't think I've ever heard him say this in a film. So I was like, where did these quotes come from? The vast majority of them come from Glengarry Glen Ross. So I was searching the clips, found the movie, watched it because at the time it was on YouTube. So I watched the entire thing, and a lot of people know the Alec Baldwin part where he has his speech.
Oh yeah, that scene is unforgettable.
Right, but the rest of the movie is just it's not a big action kind of thing. It's very much a performance piece, if there ever was one.
It's very dialogue heavy.
Correct,
dialogue
but there's tons of language in it. Every other word is F. It is fuck, basically. And it's just a fantastically, very knit, tidy movie. And it's by far and away one of my favorites, written by David Mamet, who's... I think well known for what is it, plays and stuff like that.
Stage writing and stuff like that.
Stage writing. It was a play at one point, and was made into a movie in 1992. Very low budget for a major film, and it didn't make a whole lot at the box office. But it's a classic. If you have Netflix, I know I keep saying Netflix over and over again, like they're some sort of sponsor or something.
Sponsor us, Netflix,
please. Go see it on Netflix, Glengarry Glen Ross. Believe me, you will, just for the sound bites alone, you will definitely appreciate it.
If you have an ear for interesting dialogue, this movie is heaven. This movie is heaven.
Absolutely. The scene with Al Pacino and the guy that I can't remember the name with when they're in the bar, just some of the best dialogue I've ever heard in my life.
Random
It's completely
dialogue.
random, but it comes together in the sense that of what he's trying to do, because he's a salesman and he's trying to pitch this guy, and he does it in such a way that you just you would give him whatever you had. So it's a phenomenal movie, phenomenal cast, and I'd really like to hear people's opinions on it, especially considering I almost know the entire film line by line now. I've watched it so many times. So definitely check it out and start engaging, because it's one of the most, speaking, we were talking earlier about underrated films, easily one of the most underrated films of all time.
Yeah, it should have been long remade by now with by Michael Bay. It should have been recognized as the movie that was destroyed by the remake.
I don't think this could ever really be remade. I think the topic itself,
I mean, it's a stage play, so I mean, it's something that's been redone a million times. We had looked up. There's a video online of a comparison between Al Pacino in the role of Ricky Roma and Liev Schreiber, who is a favorite actor of ours, playing the role. So I mean, it's always
Liev
interesting
Schreiber
to see
did
other
it on
actors.
the stage.
Yes. It's always interesting to see actors.
It's definitely a worthy film, cast alone, but it's a great story.
Yes. All right, so I also recommend that, but that's not my recommend, because I'm going to get my own recommend. My recommend is not instant streamable on Netflix, unfortunately.
But you could probably get it on DVD from Netflix.
Yes, you could, if you wanted to. But who has the DVD thing from Netflix? Netflix sponsor us. And I won't say that anymore.
Yes.
Anyway, no, it's not by far my favorite film, but this is one of my favorites. It's a very good film, directed by Steven Spielberg. Tom Cruise and Spielberg working together, I believe, for the first time. I think that's correct. Minority Report. I was referencing that earlier in a conversation with Tom, and I was like, I think that'll be my recommendation. The Minority Report is such a great film. I want to say, I don't know if it's based on anything. I don't think it is. I thought for a second it was based on a book.
Probably somewhere down the line, but I'm not sure either.
Well, I just remember Spielberg kind of assembling a team of smart people to essentially do research and kind of realistically determine what 60 years in the future would be like. What are some realistic things that would exist in that time technology-wise? And a lot of it so far seems to be relatively dead on. I like a lot of the ideas in the film. Not that the movie is just about ideas. It has a very interesting story, pretty fascinating, great performances. But like some of the stuff like essentially driverless cars, where you ride in a cars on essentially a rail system highway almost. And it's not really a rail system. It's just the cars drive themselves, which is something that's being developed right now. And then like really interesting stuff, like when you walk into a store, they scan your eye and your profile it's almost like the internet, where you shop around different sites. You then get ads, depicting things that you have looked at on other sites. Like when I go on Amazon, sometimes I get suggestions for things that I wasn't even looking at on Amazon. It was from other sites. And so like when you walk into a store, it scans your eye and says, oh, you might be interested in picking up this today, just kind of based on your interest sort of things. So, and this was made, I don't know.
2001?
Something like that. So, I mean, it's funny that, before they even started doing stuff like that on the internet, that was something they kind of had in that movie. So it's a really interesting look at the future, and it also has a really awesome, very subtle, not subtle, but, very layered story that I really love. And it's just one of those movies that I really, really like, and it's very well made, and I suggest it highly. So Minority Report for me, and Glenn Ross. I always have a problem
weirdest
saying that.
Name for a movie. One of the weirdest ones you'd ever.
Yeah, good luck figuring out how that name is.
Oh,
is
it plays into the
film.
end of the movie, especially.
It does, but yeah. So anyway, those are our recommendations. And email us at Gidlow Show, or not at Gidlow Show. That's our Twitter. Email us at gidlowshow@gmail.com. So gidlowshow@gmail.com with your thoughts on those recommends, if you've either seen them or get a chance to see them before we do the next show. So that is that.
Also just another shameless plug: Twitter at Danz Newz and at Thomas Gidlow.
Yes, links in the description if you're on YouTube. Also, I'll be working on getting these shows on iTunes very, very soon. That's something I will do while I'm working on putting the show together. So soon. iTunes. The link will be in the description eventually. Okay, so that's essentially almost it. You still there?
Oh, of course.
Okay, my it looks like my Skype's dropping out. So hopefully it doesn't. But I'm going to move on to my review of Parker. I ended up going to the movies this weekend with James, and we went and saw Parker, the new Jason Statham movie. And here's my review on it. It is not a good movie by any stretch of the imagination. The movie, it's almost like Jason Statham is tired of starring in Jason Statham movies. Like, he's almost given up. Apparently, I don't know, I didn't look into the history of the production of this film, but apparently the production, they filmed about a year ago or so. So it's not like, it seems like it's been sitting around. And I don't know why it wasn't released last year, but it just got around to it. It stars Jason Statham, Jennifer Lopez, and Michael Chiklis. And it's such a random cast, but it's essentially a movie about a thief who gets betrayed by his partners, and the rest of the film is him essentially trying to. His partners are planning another heist, and so he's attempting to foil their heist and get revenge.
Wait a minute, you said this is Parker, right? Not The Italian Job. Or am I mistaken?
No, it is Parker. Yes,
because Jason Statham is in both.
Yes, and they are both very similar. So yeah, it's about as generic as it gets. It is directed by a guy who actually has directed good movies. I was surprised to find that out. I can't remember the name of the director. Taylor Hackner or something like that, I believe is his name. And he's I can't remember off the top of my head what movies he's directed. And if my internet were working fine right now, it's getting kind of slow. I'd tell you. But Taylor Hackner directed it, and it is a movie almost without an editor. When I was watching the movie, it was so strangely done. The beginning had the first 30 minutes of the movie was very flashback heavy, but like it was all taking place during a heist at the beginning, and then it would flash back to a picnic scene where they're, you know, kind of setting up the heist. And I don't know why they were using flashbacks so much, because it was almost randomly popping up flashbacks. Like there was absolutely no trigger for it. It was just like, okay, flashback now. And then it got to the point in the movie where they ran out of flashbacks from the picnic, so they decided to start showing flashbacks of things we saw 10 minutes prior. Like, literally, you know, when Jason Statham gets betrayed, he gets shot and, you know, thrown into a ditch, essentially. And then we cut to, you know, him in the hospital, and he's doing a couple things, and he escapes the hospital. And then it cuts to a flashback of him getting shot and thrown into a ditch. It was just like, why are you showing that again? Like, I don't understand. And they linger on the shot of Michael Chiklis looking evil. And I'm just like, what? There's no point to any of this. I don't get it. And then eventually the flashbacks just stop. I don't know why. They just stop. And then, you know, Nick Nolte's a big character in the beginning. He disappears after about half an hour into the movie. Once the flashbacks stop, Nick Nolte, you know, disappears and never shows up for the rest of the movie. J-Lo is, her character is kind of, you know, superfluous. There's a part at the end that's very contrived that she gets kidnapped. There was no reason for her to go where she went to get kidnapped, and it was stupid. And my biggest gripe is I really hate fades. Like, when a movie uses fades improperly, it annoys me. Because generally a fade, you'll either use it to show a passage of time, or even, like, you know, it's a fine thing to use sparingly. But this movie uses a fade for every transition in the film. Even in individual scenes, there will be fades within the scene to the next shot. But the worst thing, the absolute worst thing, and this is a crime to do, is during a fight sequence in the film. It was a very kinetic fight sequence. It was very, you know, it was moving pretty quickly. The camera angles were kind of but like... It was a, you know, really quick cut action scene where they're cutting from shot to shot. There's a point where they were in a bathroom fighting, and during a shot, it was almost like, for me, sometimes when I'm editing, I'll accidentally drop a clip in there wrong, and it'll accidentally create a fade between two clips. There was a fade in between two shots in the action sequence.
Maybe it was meant to denote 3 hours later, they're still fighting.
3 hours later,
exactly
they're still fighting.
The
this
same
exact
way
same
they were just a minute ago.
Oh my god! It was, when I saw that, I was done. I yelled out loud, "What? Like, you don't do that in a fight sequence. You don't put a fade in a fight sequence."
Well, I'm sure the theater wasn't exactly packed, so I'm sure you didn't just you really
no.
Didn't
It was just James and I, and then one random guy
came in to get warm.
Essentially, yeah. It was funny because when we came in there, it was just us, and I was so excited because it was just going to be us, and we could have been as loud as we wanted to.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the guy came in, but we were still plenty loud at points. But yeah, and that fight sequence ended up, you know, with the guy being thrown off a balcony, and and the entire time they kept showing, throughout the movie, they kept showing Parker going out to this balcony for no reason but to think. And then he would come back in. And so, like, James, the entire time, he was like, someone's getting thrown over this balcony. Like, they're not showing this over and over again to not do that. And so, sure enough, at one, you know, the thing that triggers the fight scene is he comes into his apartment, goes out to the balcony, looks for a second, and then comes back in, and then the fight sequence starts. But yeah, the guy gets thrown off the balcony, and I laughed so hard at this. I was crying with laughter. The guy gets thrown off the balcony, and he's yelling all the way down. He's like, "Ah!" Like, he took a breath and kept falling. It was so ridiculous. But yeah, so Parker, what did we determine out of 10?
We did. It was going to be a 10.
I gave it a good 0.5 out of 10. That movie wasn't the worst movie in the world, but seriously, no merit to it whatsoever. Utterly generic. Nothing, you know, redeemable about it. It was the thing about Jason Statham movies is they're fun to watch and laugh at. And I did have fun to watch and laugh at this, but I think it was just too poorly put together to be as fun as it should have been. You know, some of the...
Now you realize 0.5, that's precedent right there, because, you know, Dark Knight would be kind of sort of near the top, and with like a 9.5 or whatever you'd give it, and then Parker down at 0.5.
I want to give it something more than that, but seriously, like... Yeah. There was no... I would never watch it again.
Yeah.
I would like. I don't know. I that's almost unfair to give it that low of a rating, but I would never want to watch it again. And I think any movie I would never want to watch again gets a 0.5.
Right. I'll tell you this much. I have not seen it. I will not watch it unless somebody forces me to. So I just because I want to, be able to have both of us rating each movie that is reviewed, I'll give it a 2. So how about that? I'll give it a 2, having not even seen it, and we'll never.
You're giving it a better review. Well, I think somebody would give it a better review if they hadn't seen it.
Well, there you go. I'm giving it the I have not seen it rating, which is a 2.
Parker, 0.5 out of 10. All right. Well, thank you, Jason Statham, for that interjection. Well, this has been about almost 2 hours, I think.
Just about.
Maybe a little under that. So I think that's pretty much everything. Pretty much. So, again, email for the show is gidlowshow@gmail.com. The Twitter is @gidlowshow. Follow that, and you will get, I'll tweet out trailers. And oh, no, there was something that I completely forgot about that we'll talk about here in a second. But anyway, let me finish this. We'll tweet out trailers and news articles that we're going to talk about on the show, and as well as the show when it airs, I will tweet it out, and when it's on iTunes, I will also tweet that out. Now, a news article that I completely skipped over. It wasn't even a news article; it was a trailer that Tom brought up, and this was the thing, Tom, that I said that we would have a bit of a discussion.
Oh, I was going to say, I thought maybe we already sort of.
I completely forgot about this, and so this is a little news extra.
So this is definitely an extra for all of you listeners.
Okay, so the trailer came out, and I saw this trailer in front of Parker for a movie called Olympus Has Fallen. It's a film starring Gerard Butler, Aaron Eckhart, Morgan Freeman, and seemingly featuring Ashley Judd, considering she dies in the trailer. Now, Tom, when he linked this to me, he was like, "Have you seen this?" And then he was like. He was talking about how, it looks terrible and stuff like that. When I saw this trailer for the first time, I thought, it almost seems like a movie straight out of the 90s. It seems to me like Die Hard in the White House, essentially. The story is, Gerard Butler plays a secret security guy for the president. The president and his wife are, driving in their limo in snowy conditions, seemingly, and the limo goes off-road, dangling over some sort of cliff or something like that. And Gerard Butler, the Secret Service guy, saves the president, but not the wife. The wife dies. It looms over him. He's no longer part of the Secret Service. So, Gerard Butler is now a down-and-out Secret Service guy. And then there's attack on the White House, where the president is taken hostage. Well, the one man who is available to the now acting president, Morgan Freeman, is, their only hope. Gerard Butler somehow gets into the White House, fights his way in, and it essentially turns into Die Hard in the White House. Basically. Now, the things I noted from this trailer was, one, the CGI looks really bad. Some of the action stuff with guns shooting at the White House and stuff like planes flying and shooting at the White House and stuff like that look kind of ridiculous. But watching this trailer, I kind of almost got that sense of, this is almost like a Die Hard kind of movie. I love Die Hard, and it almost looks like a fun, don't take it too seriously movie. And from Tom's reaction, I don't think he had that same feeling about it.
No. And later finding out that there was another movie coming out that's basically the exact same plot.
With Jamie Foxx.
Jamie Foxx
as the president, yeah.
Which, is fine, but I mean, I don't even know where to start with what I saw. Again, trailers tend to, you don't get the whole sense of the film. Some of the time. Sometimes they show the entire movie in a trailer.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to judge. It may turn out better than it looks, but I doubt it. So I just don't get. I don't get. I get it, but I don't understand. I liked some of the movies like this from the 90s. regardless of how the special effects looked, or even if it was like a specially effected driven film, like Armageddon is a good example. Can't think. Independence Day was another one. Those actually weren't bad. If you look back on them, it was part of the '90s popcorny, action stuff that's not as realistic as you'd think it is nowadays. But they were very entertaining. Mm-hmm. I've watched, Independence Day and Armageddon somewhat recently. Having watched a lot of the newer stuff that's out there, I found them both still highly enjoyable. Mm-hmm. And now it just seems like all we're doing is we're taking the bad parts of those movies and making them the central focus of these retreaded, pure money grabs. Like,
well, hold on. First off, you said you used Armageddon as an example. To my recollection, there was also a similar instance where it was essentially the same movie was coming out around the same time, Deep Impact, which also has Morgan Freeman as the president.
The same idea. Now, these two movies that are coming out now may not be quite the same plot. The trailer, or what I've read, though, makes them seem exactly the same. Deep Impact was a completely different movie. I mean, if you've seen Deep Impact and you've seen Armageddon, the only real connecting thing is that it's an asteroid coming for the Earth.
Yeah, but they also have similar plans where they intend on drilling into... Well, in Deep Impact, they plan on nuking, the asteroid, and they end up succeeding... like they do in Armageddon, but there's a slightly different twist to that. But
right. So I mean, I can understand that, but I don't really know quite how to explain it. It's just it looked bad. Mm-hmm. It was very poorly done, and I haven't seen this trailer in a week, so I'm definitely not as hot as I was when I saw it. But my first thought was to send the link to you, and I'm like, have you? Exactly what I said was, have you seen this?
You asked me. I said yes. I added that to the topics of my show, and you said, "Haha, you liked it." And I said, "We should save it to talk about it." And you said,
right.
"I hope so."
Yeah. On the outset, you look at the cast. The cast sounds great.
Yeah, Aaron Eckhart, Ashley Judd, Gerard Butler, Morgan Freeman, Angela Bassett.
Well, there you go. I mean, it sounds like a great cast. It's just the whole thing for me. You want to make a trailer, make people interested and want to go see it. Now, there is a culture of people in this country that will go see anything without a second thought, generally, if it looks flashy and it's explosions. And, oh, that's going to be fun, let's go watch. Which is, again, nothing wrong. But with anybody who analyzes any part of what they see with their eyes and with their brain, then it's kind of difficult to sit there and accept this as, what in the world did I just see? Why would they think I would want to go see something like this? I mean, now I could go on and on forever and ever and about all of this stuff, but it boggles my mind that someone thought this was a great idea and somebody thought this was well presented enough to put it in as a trailer to sell your film, and it turned me so off of it that, like, if I'd only read an article and read the cast, I'd have went and saw it. Mm-hmm. But after having watched that trailer, why in the world would I ever want to go pay money to see that movie?
I know. Well, we constantly talk about how, movies aren't as good as, when back in my day, movies were better. But gold. Movies were gold. Sweet Texas gold.
No, and it's not even really all of that. I mean, there's a lot of good movies out there. I mean, we mentioned X-Men First Class, excellent movie. Mm-hmm. Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight, excellent movie. There's a lot of examples of really good movies out there. But it seems the majority of them aren't that good.
All right, well, that's Tom's final thought on this whole trailer thing. I'm keeping an open mind, and hopefully the next trailer they release for that is maybe better. But I think it looks like kind of a more of a fun, action-y movie. Not that it I don't know. It kind of gives me that Die Hard vibe, and it seemed like an interesting idea. And yes, I had heard about that Jamie Foxx movie first. I don't know who else is in it. Yeah. So anyway, that is everything. And thank you guys for listening to us talk about...
Sorry to end it on such a positive note.
Well, that's our first Thomas rant.
It won't be the last, so bear with us.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. Be sure to check us out on iTunes. Whenever we are on iTunes, I will be sure to let you know. And we will be back next week with another episode of the Gidlow Movie Show.
Thanks, guys.